My name is Rabbi Yisrael Kalmus. I have an organization which is called Sion Breslev Project. And we are trying to help people in our generation to connect to Hashem, to connect to the divine in a way which is resonant, which relates, which connects to them on a very deep personal level and is relevant to them. So to begin this meditation that we're going to do together, Bezrat Hashem, I want everybody to close their eyes. And I want you to imagine that you're on a wheel. And everybody in the world is on this wheel. And the wheel is starting to move. And as time goes on, this wheel is moving faster and faster. And you see that the only way to keep going on this wheel is to keep up with everybody else by running on the wheel as it's turning. But you see that as the wheel is turning faster and faster, it's harder and harder to keep up. And you're not able to. And then all of a sudden, you look back. And you say, you know what, maybe I could slow down. But if you slow down, you fall off the wheel entirely. Now imagine the type of despair you have. That you're not able to keep up with the world, with the wheel, but you can't slow down or you'll fall off completely. So you fall down to the ground. But you notice that when you get back up, the wheel is moving a little bit slower. And when you look up to see why, you realize that you fell into the wheel. That when you fell down in despair and you got back up, you notice that you were closer to the inside of the wheel. It was an accident, but now you stood up and you realized that I'm actually closer to the center of the wheel. And now even though it's moving just as fast, I feel like I'm moving slower. So all of a sudden you get excited and you think to yourself, maybe I should take another step in. And you move inside closer to the center. And you see that even though the wheel is moving faster and faster, and nobody can keep up, or they fall off entirely, you're moving slower and slower. And then you think to yourself, what if I get to the center of this wheel? Maybe I'll feel like I'm moving very slow, no matter how fast the wheel is going. And all of a sudden you get to the center of the wheel. You stand there, and you see that the wheel is turning, the revolutions are going faster than it ever has. And nobody can keep up. And yet you're at the center of this wheel, and you're not moving at all. You're completely still. This meditation that I just spoke over was created by Tzvi Freeman. He is a rabbi who's on Chabad.org, and he's an expert in meditation. And he explains that the center of the wheel is like Shabbat. You'll notice that the world is going faster and faster and faster, and we're barely able to keep up, right? You have to work harder. You have to work longer. You're on all these different technological devices. You're connected to all these different social platforms. Everything that you do is online. And it just feels like the world continues to get faster and faster and faster. But we're still people. We haven't changed. So it's harder and harder to keep up. And on the other hand, if I don't keep up, then I'm not part of the world. And that's not good either. So what's the answer to this? Because we see that psychological distress is at an all-time high. We see that illness that comes from mental stress is increasing. We see that people are struggling with drug addiction and abuse more than they ever have. We see that people are putting themselves in dangerous positions and situations to try and move away from this stressful existence. When maybe 100 years ago, when we were much less developed, and it seems like it wasn't as good as it is now, yet people were generally mentally healthier. So how does that work? Why would Hashem put us in a world where we're not able to make it, no matter where we go? comes the Torah to teach, this is the secret of Shabbat. That on Shabbat, it's still during the week, and you're still in the world. But you create conditions for yourself that you're able to access something deep within. You're able to access your soul. You turn off your technology, you turn off your phone, you turn off your TV, you're not on your social media platforms, you're not on your applications, you're not on your devices. You are not outside in the world trying to make things happen. You're inside in yourself trying to find out who you are. And in that place on the inside of you, it's still. And this is the secret of the Torah. And this is the secret of Moshe. We know that the Jewish people were in slavery. They were in a country called Egypt. Now it's fascinating because the difference between Egypt and Israel, they're right next to each other geographically. But there's something topographically which makes them very different. And that is that in the land of Egypt, all of the water, all of the sustenance for their vegetation, for their granary, it comes from the Nile River. And it irrigates all of the crops in the country. So therefore, everything that they have is in the land already. But if you just move over and you go to Israel, you'll notice that all of the water from that land comes from the sky. They are completely dependent on whether it rains or not. If it rains, then they're able to have sustenance. If it doesn't, they have none. But in Egypt, they always have, because the Nile River always has water in it and it's always irrigating it. What is the reason why the Torah speaks about the Jewish people going from Israel to Egypt and that being called slavery? Because on paper, it sounds like you have an upgrade, right? I'm not dependent on circumstances which are outside of myself. I'm in a country, I'm in a land now where it's all of my own doing. I can take care of myself. I can do whatever I want, whenever I want. I can sustain myself because it's all for the taking, right? And yet the Torah calls this slavery. The word Mitzrayim, which is the Hebrew word for Egypt, actually comes from the word Meitzar. Meitzar means constricted. When the Jews went from Israel, where they were shepherds, to Mitzrayim, to live in the cosmopolitan modern world, the Torah says that they started out there thriving, flourishing, engaging, being very progressive and setting new bars and standards for what's considered technologically advanced in that country. And like what happens in many host countries that the Jews have been to, then it turns south. And the paradigm for this is the Jews going down to Mitzrayim. Now the Torah, when we think of it, we usually read it as a history book, right? This happened then, and then this happened then, and then this happened then. But the Torah is not a history book. The Torah is a guide to one's soul. And that means that it's above space and time. And with that being said, this concept of the Jews going down to Mitzrayim, if we have to learn about it every year, and we're constantly reading about it, the secret of this is to understand that our soul going down into this physical world and having to live in these times is the concept of the Jews going down to Mitzrayim. And therefore, this means the world to us. Because however the Jews coped with being in Egypt, however the soul is capable of coming down to this physical world and experiencing peace and blessing and joy and connection, we have to find out how they were able to do that in Mitzrayim. Because Mitzrayim is a code word for this world. And the Jewish people is a code word for your soul. So how does the soul come down to this physical world, inhabit your physical body, live in physical society? And how do you keep up with the times? Because it's moving at an all-time pace, and we can't keep up. We're struggling with all these different new psychological, psychosomatic, physiological symptoms. New things, even though we're thriving in technology, we're thriving in medicine, we're thriving in science, but people are not. People's emotional state is more disturbed, it's more distressed than it's ever been. Okay. So here we have the secret. The secret is the name Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe was the redeemer of the Jewish people. When Moshe was asked by Hashem to go down to Mitzrayim to save the Jews, Moshe told them that you're not slaves. You don't have to live like this. I know that the world is moving incredibly fast. I know that you feel like you have to keep up. I know you feel like if you don't, you're going to fall off the wheel entirely. I know that when you feel like you're trying to keep up with the Joneses, you're lagging behind. And even if you are able to achieve it, your entire internal mental state is blown up. Moses says, I know all of that, but listen to me. There is a way that you can actually achieve equanimity. You can achieve tranquility. You can achieve inner peace, even in a world that moves this fast. Even in Mitzrayim, you're actually free. Now, can you imagine? You struggle with, let's say, depression. You struggle with anxiety. You struggle with substance abuse. You struggle with an affinity towards anger, an affinity towards destructive actions, right? Everybody has something. Everybody has a host of things. Sometimes people have all of these things. Now, let's say, imagine you're paying money to go see a therapist. You're paying money to see a psychiatrist. You're paying money for some new age psychological modality, which you heard is going to change your life. It's going to change the world. You're paying over the course of years, thousands of dollars for this, right? Everyone is searching for an answer to their own personal problems. Now imagine that there's a figure who comes into your life and tells you, I have the answer. I know the answer. The answer is you're not a slave. And here's how you see that you're really free. How much would you pay for that? How much would you pay for a wise man to come and tell you everything that you've been through in your life is going to reach a culmination point of cherut, of freedom? Everything is going to turn for the very best. You're going to live a beautiful life, a happy life, a fulfilled life, a meaningful life. It's all going to turn right now. You just got to listen to me, right? Anybody would give anything they have for that. And yet the Torah says that when Moshe came to tell them this, they couldn't hear him. So this is fascinating because we must be giving a deep psychological, a deep spiritual insight into the psyche of a person that can withhold him from actually experiencing the answer to his own problems. What did it say about the Jewish people that they weren't able to hear him? The Torah says that they had kotzer ruach. They had shortness of breath. Because they had kotzer ruach, because they were breathing too quickly, they couldn't hear what Moshe had to say. Because they were moving too fast on the wheel, and they couldn't catch their breath, then even the answer that they had been searching for their whole life, they couldn't hear it. So here we have a very, very deep and very poignant and very critical point. And that is that the Torah is trying to point out that for you to connect to your soul, for you to connect to a state of equanimity and to a state of inner meaning and wholeness in your life, you have to be able to hear good advice. But the only way to hear good advice is to quiet your mind down. It's to quiet your body down first. When you go to a therapist, often what they'll do is they'll have you do meditation first. They'll have you work to slow down your breathing. I used to be a mental health therapist, a social worker, a substance abuse counselor. I worked very often with people with trauma, with severe substance abuse addiction. And very often, the main bulk of our sessions, especially the beginning, before we even spoke about what was going on in their life, was we had them go through full scan body meditations. Close their eyes, think about their eyes, think about their nose, think about their mouth, breathe slowly, slowly, slowly until they got their breathing rate down slow enough that they can actually hear what I had to say. So that's an amazing thing. Now, we may not think that we're in that situation, but the Torah is telling us we're all in that place. We can't catch our breath. The reason why we can't find this thing that we're looking for is because we're breathing too fast. So we have to slow it down. So now the question is, what do you do to be able to calm down your body? What do you do to be able to calm down your mind, to be able to experience your soul? Or in this case, to experience Shabbat. It's a mitzvah from the Torah to bring Shabbat into your weekdays. Why is it a mitzvah to bring Shabbat into your weekdays? Because Shabbat represents inner tranquility. It represents yishuv da'at, calmness and tranquility of mind. You have to bring that into your days because your quality of life is dependent on the tranquility of your mind and the calmness of your senses. So, there is a very great spiritual master, a great Hasidic master, a great savant. His name is Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. And Rabbi Nachman has a tremendous novelty in this area, many tremendous novelties. But the one that we're going to speak about today is something that he says in his magnum opus, Likutei Moharan. Rabbi Nachman has a tremendous novelty there, and he says there that the reason why people feel far from Hashem is because they're not happy. So many times you're going to hear rabbis, they're going to say that people feel disconnected from Hashem because maybe they don't keep the mitzvot, maybe they don't go to shul, maybe they don't learn Torah, right? Maybe they don't pray, right? Rabbi Nachman says it has nothing to do with any of those things. Every Jew has the capacity to connect to Hashem from wherever they are at any given time, no matter what they're involved in. And the only reason Rabbi Nachman says that Jews don't feel connected to something which is greater than them is because they're not happy. So what does that have to do with one another? What does me being happy have to do with me being able to connect to something divine, to something transcendent, to a greater thing than myself? The source of happiness, the source of tranquility, the source of blessing and peace. Why do I need to be happy to connect to that thing? Right? And you actually see it explicitly in the Gemara. The Gemara says that only a person who's happy, the Shekhinah, meaning the presence of Hashem, dwells in that person. What does joy do that allows you to connect to Hashem? So Rabbi Nachman says, because for you to have your mind unlocked, for you to be able to think thoughts that you want to think, you have to first achieve joy. Now think about this. This is a very practical thing. If you wake up in the morning and you're all flustered, you woke up late, right? Now all of a sudden you're rushing to work. You miss the first train. You finally get on the second train. You finally get to work. Now you have to meet with this client and you're all flustered, right? When you get to that meeting and you have to give a presentation, are you able to think clearly? Are you able to present yourself in the way that you want to? All these things that you already know inside of you, are you able to verbalize them? You're not, because your mind is in a state of what's called mochin de katnut. It's constricted. Why is it constricted? Because the events so far in your day have led you to be stressed. Stress is the opposite of joy, right? Now, if you woke up early that day and you were able to, let's say, have a mantra in the morning where you went through 10 minutes, 20 minutes of speaking out positive things about yourself. I'm a good person. I care about others. I want a better life. I'm smart. I read. I learn from other people. I have humility, right? I'm constantly trying to grow and to connect to others. I've never given up in my life. Now all of a sudden, you are achieving a higher level of joy. And then from that place, imagine you have a nice cup of coffee and you're still way early. You have a nice cup of coffee, you relax a little bit, you breathe, you enjoy the outside, the weather, and now all of a sudden you start to go over your presentation, but calmly, with a settled mind. And then you see like, oh, I really understand this, I really got this, I'm excited for this, I'm looking forward to this opportunity. You get to your meeting and you go there. And now what's that presentation like? It's amazing. You have charisma, you have energy, you have excitement, you have conviction. So what's the difference between these two things? Why in this case it's an abysmal wreck, and why in this case it's a unbelievable success? And the answer is because in the first case, you don't have joy. And because you're not happy at the moment you go to present, your mind is not yours. You're not able to utilize it and to direct it in the way that you want to. Because Rabbi Nachman is teaching that there is a Kabbalistic secret, that joy is the key to being able to utilize and apply your thoughts in the way that you want them to. He compares it to like a horse and a rider, that you are the horse and your thoughts are you are the rider and the horse is your thoughts. So horses sometimes go in ways you don't want them to. But if you have control of your thoughts, you can just reel them back in and start thinking about what you want to think about. But Rabbi Nachman is saying your ability to reel those thoughts back in is dependent on you being happy. Now, in this other case, you had a calm day. You were able to get up early. You were able to establish positive things about yourself. You were able to therefore feel happy. And now you're thinking clearly. And now with your mind at your disposal, you can connect and you can express yourself in any way that you want. Comes Rabbi Nachman to say, do you know why people feel far from Hashem? Do you know why they've never experienced Hashem in a palpable, felt way? Because their thoughts are not their own. They're not able to think their own thoughts. They're not able to control and to experience that which is in their mind because it is unkempt because of the lack of joy in their life. Because once a person is happy, then their mind is free to feel, to think, to experience deeper things than they previously did. Now Rabbi Nachman says, so how do I achieve joy? Right? If the whole reason that I've never experienced Hashem in my life is because apparently I'm not happy, right? So now some people might say, well, of course I'm not happy. Another person might say, no, I am happy, right? But there's a difference between joy of, I have a nice cup of coffee, it makes me feel good. Somebody gives me a compliment, it makes me feel good. I got a fat paycheck at work, it made me feel good. Joy, according to the Torah, is an inner state. It's not dependent on things taking place. It's unconditional. The word simcha, besimcha, which means to be happy, if you flip the letters around, it spells machshava, which means thought. Thought is something internal. Joy is an internal state. To achieve joy, Rabbi Nachman says, is the hardest thing you could possibly do. But once you have joy, now you can think and your mind is unlocked. And now you're able to experience things which are greater than you, things which are divine. Things are outside of the hamster wheel that we are constantly running on. So now, what are ways that Rabbi Nachman teaches are tools, techniques, practical ways that we can be able to unlock our minds to achieve inner joy in a way which is practical, in a way which is daily, so that I can implement these things in my life. First thing, and this completely changed my life. Rabbi Nachman highly encouraged a meditation practice, which is called Hidbodedut. Hidbodedut comes from the word boded. Boded means to be secluded, to be isolated, to be alone. Oftentimes when we think about seclusion or isolation or alone, especially on the heels of COVID, it just brings up bad memories. This doesn't sound like a positive thing to be a part of. However, the Torah teaches that nothing exists positive or negative. It depends how you use it. Now, if you're isolated because you don't have a friend circle, if you're isolated because there is a virus which is sweeping over the world, and now you have to place yourself alone somewhere, so that's obviously a very painful experience. That's not fun. That's not getting you into a higher state of joy. That's doing the opposite. But Rabbi Nachman says that if you actively choose to create a time, a space in which you are completely alone in your day, in nature, by a river, in a forest, in a field, and you make certain conditions, like Shabbat, that during that time, and only during that time during the day, I won't have my phone on me, I won't have my social media on me, I won't have things beeping and buzzing. All of that stuff for 1 hour a day will be away. For 1 hour a day, every day, I will have Shabbat, what Rabbi Nachman calls Hidbodedut. I will put myself into a state of personal seclusion for 1 hour away from everything. And I will enhance that experience by going out into nature. Because in the natural world, you'll notice it's much easier to achieve a higher state of tranquility right away. You start to feel like, oh my gosh, this hamster wheel that I'm on, it's not everywhere, right? When I go back into these natural states, so I actually feel for myself that this is outside of the matrix. Like I broke the matrix. I'm by a river. It's hard to explain, but people just feel God when they're outside. Okay. So now by being outside, what does that do for you? Rabbi Nachman says that when a Jewish person is alone of their own volition, and they start to converse with Hashem, they start to converse with the creator of the universe, they start to converse with the source of their soul, then what ends up happening is they start to experience closeness to Hashem. And they start to experience what Rabbi Nachman calls bitul. In Chassidut, in Kabbalah, they explain that the key to achieving experience of the divine is called bitul. Bitul means nullification of external self. How do I achieve bitul of self? Not my inner self, right? We want to connect to our inner self. We want to get to the inside of the wheel. We want to experience Shabbos. But the only way that we can do that is actually quieting down my external self, my body, my desires, my yearnings for personal advancement, right? My yearnings for honor, my yearnings for money, my yearnings for personal progress. If I can somehow quiet all of that along with my senses, my eyesight, my hearing, my touch, I could just quiet all of that down on the outside. Then what's going to happen is you get to elevate and experience the inside. You get to experience your soul. So Rabbi Nachman says, here is the trick to doing it. It's totally free. You don't have to pay a therapist for it. You don't have to go to a psychiatrist for it. You don't need to have any negative side effects that come with it. All you're going to see in your life is tremendous blessing and inner peace and joy that you never knew was possible. And it's totally free. Go seclude yourself for a time period every day without your phone, without technology, without people being able to contact you, just for a certain period of time, not the whole day. The goal of the Torah is not to have us be living on a mountain somewhere, disconnected from society. It's the opposite. The Torah wants us to be as fully involved in the world as possible, but to be able to draw down divine light into the mundane world. How do I receive divine light to be able to elevate the mundanity of my life? The experiences of being with my kids, my wife, my family, at work, eating, drinking, sleeping, intimacy. How do I elevate all of those things? Because Hasidah says that is the key to what we're here for. We're here to take the physical world and to uplift and elevate it. But to do that, we need to be able to draw down divine light into those physical experiences. How do I draw down divine light in a physical, practical way? Rabbi Nachman says, Hitbodedut. Go alone somewhere in nature and just start talking to Hashem like He's your good friend. So a person might ask, what should I speak to Him about? First of all, it's very unusual for me. It might be hard for me to speak in general, but that's to a person. I don't see Hashem anywhere. He's not speaking back to me, right? So that's very unusual. How does that work, right? So Rabbi Nachman says, start by saying thank you. You might say, well, what am I saying thank you for? I have so much stress. I have financial stress. I have marital stress. I have interpersonal stress. I have all these different challenges. I have health issues, right? So what am I saying thank you for? So if you'll notice, during the day, the nature of you, because your body is not quiet, because your external is not quiet, the nature of the external is to focus on negativity, right? You'll notice that if somebody does something that bothers you, it's hard to move from it. You can't stop meditating on it, cogitating on it, thinking about it, right? Even if somebody comes after and says, hey, you did a great job in that, right? But before that, this person said something terrible to you. A million people after that could say the nicest things to you, but you cannot stop focusing on that one thing that that person said. Why? It doesn't even make sense, right? This one little bit in relation to this much, why should I focus on this little bit of negativity? Because the nature of a person's external self is to focus on what's missing. However, Rabbi Nachman says the entire joy of the soul is to be thankful for the good. To constantly search for, to gaze at the good alone. And when you gaze at the good, you're able to fill up with gratitude, okay? So now what are you saying thank you for? The fact that you can see. That's a gift. All you have to do is close your eyes for, let's say, 30 seconds, or take your glasses off. Now imagine, without your contacts, without your glasses, or if you can see, just imagine walking around with your eyes closed all the time. What would your life be like? Now open your eyes again. How much would you pay to have eyesight? $30,000, $50,000, $100,000. Would I give up everything I have just so I can see? Okay, so it's yours. Hashem gave it to you. It's a gift. Thank you, Hashem, that I can see. Can you hear? Imagine, just put earplugs in. Start talking to people. Start speaking out loud and hear that you can't hear yourself. Imagine what your life would be like if you couldn't hear. Now take your earplugs out. Wow, how much would you pay to be able to hear? What is this worth? And it was given to you for free. Notice, what is the one thing that you need, you cannot live without for more than, let's say, a minute? Oxygen, right? You have to pay for all these different things in your life. What is something that's totally free, that's available to you at any moment? You're constantly utilizing it, and you don't even realize the entire day, maybe for days, maybe for weeks, for months, or even for years until you go into a pool, or until you go to a mikveh, or you just happen to be underwater in an ocean, and you can't breathe for some reason. That you realize this whole time you've been breathing in and out oxygen, right? Who created that oxygen for you? Hashem did. That's a gift. The Gemara says that if you were capable of it, it would be kedai for you to say thank you for every breath you take, right? Now, that sounds crazy, right? How could I function as a human being and say thank you all the time for every breath? Well, everybody is able to do it. But that doesn't make it any less of a miracle. Just because something is there all the time for you doesn't mean it's not a gift. Doesn't mean it's not something you should cherish. The nature of a person is to forget about the good and to focus on the bad. In Hibodadu, we're trying to reorient ourselves to the good. How about the fact that you can speak? Imagine you couldn't communicate. What would that be like? You have all these thoughts in your head and you can't say them. Right? Sometimes we have elements of that. But imagine you couldn't talk at all. How much would you pay to be able to speak? To be able to communicate what you feel? And the list goes on and on. That's only on the physical side. Now, let's go a little further. Do you have a refrigerator? Does your refrigerator have food in it? Do you know it used to be you'd have to go to the market, you'd have to cook it that day, otherwise it went bad. There was no way to keep the food, right? And you had to go through an entire process of agricultural cultivation. To be able to have bread, you know how many steps it takes to make bread? You go buy bread from the 7-Eleven, you get it by your local CVS, you can get it at a drugstore at this point. You can get bread anywhere, anytime, for just $1, a couple dollars, like literally nothing. But it took a long time to make that bread, and it's just available to you. Now, obviously, you probably have more than bread in your fridge. Maybe you have vegetables, maybe you have fruits, maybe you have some meats, maybe you have some cheeses. Maybe on the outside you even have spreads, peanut butter, jelly, hummus, right? You have all these different, now you have drinks. You have orange juice, water, apple juice, tea, coffee. Just a few hundred years ago, nobody had food like that. Even kings didn't have food like that available to them. When was the last time that we sat back and appreciated how we have all this food at our disposal, all these drinks at our disposal? Now, what do we usually think about? We usually think about that one food that I don't have. I usually think about that drink that I don't have. that food that they have at the restaurant that I haven't had in a while. I'm not thinking about all the stuff I have. I think about the one thing I don't have. Hibodedut is to be able to reorient yourself to what a gift that you have. That you have whatever you want to eat, whenever you want to eat it, available to you. Okay? Now within yourself, do you have anything positive about yourself? Any gifts? Are you a kind person? That's a gift. Were you born like that? Did you develop kindness? Usually you're kind from when you're little. So that was a gift that was given to you. Now imagine you weren't kind. What would your life be like if you just could not be kind? That would be very challenging, right? Imagine that whatever intelligence you have, right? You have some type of wisdom. You feel like you're connected to something deeper. Imagine you didn't have that wisdom. That wisdom is a gift. And the list goes on and on. Imagine you're married, right? You have a spouse. Now, usually I'm focused on what's the one thing that's missing in my marriage, right? They're not complimenting me. They stop paying as much attention to me. And, I feel like they're not wanting to go out on dates as much as they used to, or they're not looking at me in the same way, right? But let's go back for a second. How many people do you know that can't get married, that can't find a spouse, right? How much would they pay to be able to have a spouse who in general is actually a really good person, who's loyal, who's never left, who's remained with you, who's been a father to your children, a husband to you, plans on spending their whole life with you, but they're not complimenting you as much as they used to? How fortunate you would be to have such a thing. And you can keep going and going with this. Now that's just thank you. Now, once you have achieved the state of gratitude, you start to feel tremendous joy because you realize that despite whatever is missing in your life, whether it's health or whether it's wealth, whether it's relationship, whether it's economic success, whether it's success at work, whatever it is, but now you realize you already have so much. And yes, I would like to have that one thing. That would be great. But I'm not lacking. I have so much. Whereas before, the nature of a person is just to look at what he doesn't have, and he literally feels like he has nothing. That's why part of the reason why people are so unhappy now. Because we focus only on what we don't have, when in reality we have so much. Now from this place of joy and realizing I already have, now Rabbi Nachman says, what should you do? You should ask Hashem for all the things that you want in your life. Whatever you want. Now, you might think to yourself, well, I already am constantly thinking about what I want. It's always on my mind. But there's a difference between asking Hashem for what you want and thinking that you, of your own volition, are able to achieve that thing, right? You'll notice in the Torah something amazing. In America, you have a list of the Declaration of Independence, right? And you have there all of these rights, right? The Bill of Rights. You have a right to happiness. You have a right to religious freedom. You have a right to the possession of a firearm, right? Whatever else is on there. So you'll notice if you look in the Torah, there is no concept of a person having rights. The only thing that the Torah speaks about is your responsibilities. Now, you might not feel like there's a big difference. What's the difference between rights and responsibilities? What's so radically different about that? So when you have rights, you feel like you should have something. It's your right. Comes the Torah to tell you there is no such thing. Every single thing that you have is a free gift from Hashem. And now, once I realize that everything that I've been given is a gift, so now I'm responsible to take care of those things. It's not something that I created of my own volition. I don't have a right to be happy. I have a responsibility to cultivate joy because it was given to me, at least in potential, as a gift. When I'm having children, these children are not mine. Hashem gave me them to safeguard these children. They're my responsibility. They're not my right. I don't have a right to be married. If I have a partner, it's a gift. And what do you do with gifts? You take care of them. They're like treasures. You're responsible for them. Now, when a person feels that they have rights to all these different things, they might feel like that's progress, right? The Torah was written thousands of years ago. That's ancient. That's archaic. Now we have a progressive world. We have a modern world. This is much better. We all have rights. But in reality, the more rights you have, the less joy you have. Because joy comes from humility. The humility of knowing I don't need to have anything. And everything is a free gift. But with every right that you have, you build up this consciousness that I deserve things. And once you think that you deserve things, then you're always going to be dissatisfied. One time, there was a class, and the rabbi asked these couples, does your spouse make you happy? And obviously everybody's quiet. You have the men on one side, you have the women on the other side. Nobody wants to say, obviously, because their spouse on the other. Even if the answer is no, who wants to get up and say, yeah, that's right, my husband doesn't make me happy. My wife doesn't make me happy. That's not going to be a good date night after. But all of a sudden, one of the women stood up and said, my husband doesn't make me happy. And everybody goes, oh. This is going to be very dramatic in a second. So the rabbi said to her, why doesn't your husband make you happy? She said, because I make me happy. It's not my husband's responsibility to make me happy. It's my responsibility to make me happy. I love having my husband. It's great to have my husband. We do great things together. I love him being with me. I'm happy I'm married to him. But it's not his responsibility to make me happy. It's my responsibility to make me happy. And what happens is the world teaches us that it's our right that everyone should make us happy, that everyone should reciprocate our good actions, our kindnesses. And we constantly are getting hurt, getting disappointed, being dissatisfied. But it's all coming from this one unconscious belief that I have a right to something. But once you realize you have no right to anything, you have only gifts, and gifts that you're responsible for. Now, once I realize that my inner state of being is my responsibility, it's nobody else's responsibility, now I can actually work on achieving joy myself. And then what happens when your husband comes and gives you a compliment, says, hey babe, you look great. Or you go to work and someone says, wow, I really enjoyed your presentation. Or your kids say to you, wow, mommy, I'm really so happy to have you. So if up until this point now, you have been working on taking responsibility for your own inner emotional state and knowing that it's a free gift and you don't have a right to anything. Now when they do that, it's like a cherry on top of a cake. You've already achieved some level of inner joy on your own, and someone comes and compliments you. It's like a cherry on top of a cake because you've already established an internal state of being which is not dependent on others. But now imagine that you didn't have that because you think that it's everyone's responsibility and it's your right that they should make you happy. So if you're now like that, then when you're waiting on your husband to say something nice to you, your wife to say something nice to you, your kids to listen to you, your boss to promote you, right? All of these different things. And now if they happen, great, you'll feel good. And if they don't, so I'm angry, so I'm upset, so I'm sad. But in this first case, you're not any of those things. And in this next case, you are, but nothing changed. It's exactly the same situation. Why have I devolved into such a state of emotional despair, psychological disarray? Where in this first case, if I get a compliment, okay, great. And if not, okay. What's the difference? Rights and responsibilities, right? Why does the Torah say that the key to joy is the Torah itself? It's higher consciousness. Because the higher consciousness of the Torah is that nothing we have has to be. Once one knows that, they're able to appreciate everything that's in their life. And they're also able to take responsibility for everything that's in their life. And it's once a person takes responsibility for whatever's going on with them, that's actually the key to achieving joy. Because you're no longer looking on the outside of yourself for it. You understand that it's within you and you simply have to cultivate it. So here we have first gratitude and then asking for things. But this asking for things is not coming from, I have a right to it. We don't have a right to anything. Doesn't mean Hashem doesn't care about us. Doesn't mean Hashem doesn't love us. It doesn't mean Hashem doesn't want to shower us with blessings and unbelievable things. He does. But it doesn't mean we have a right to it. So now when we come to Hashem and we ask him, Hashem, can you please help that I have Shalom Bayit, that I have tranquility and matrimony with my spouse? Not because I deserve it, but because I want so deeply to feel connected to my spouse. And I think it would dramatically improve my connection to you, my connection to my soul, if things were going smoothly at home, right? Please, Hashem, help it to be that my children and I get along, that my children listen to me, that they give me nachat. Not because I deserve it, but because it would improve my quality of life, and I know you want me to be happy. And once you have already realized how much Hashem has done for you and is doing for you, you'll have conviction to actually ask Hashem for more. Because if you're coming in thinking you don't have anything, Hashem never did anything for you, right? Or at least it's not at the forefront of your mind, you won't have the conviction or the belief that either Hashem cares enough to give you more, to give you something different, or that he will. But once you realize that he loves you, he wants you, he cares about you, he's already given you so much. He created the whole world just for you, like the Gemara says. So now you can have the conviction of heart and strength of mind to ask Hashem for more, but from a place of free gift. All of these things contribute to being able to breathe slowly. Rabbi Nachman once said that when they ask you what you got in Breslov, because his students were getting a lot of flack. Why are you by this crazy Hasidic master who's saying wild things, who's telling you all these deep Torah ideas that we never heard of before? And Rabbi Nachman said, if they ask you what you got in Breslov, tell them Ruach. Ruach means life force. Ruach also means breath. I taught you how to breathe. This technology called Hitbodedut, being alone with Hashem, talking to him as if he's your best friend, thanking him for things in your life that you maybe haven't before but you know are a blessing, digging down deep and realizing you have even more blessings that you just never knew about, and then even possibly thanking Hashem for challenges in your life, realizing that they have made you who you are today, and you have been able to overcome them through different means and methods and supports around you. And then to be able to ask Hashem from the bottom of your heart, not from a place of, I deserve this, but man, wouldn't it be nice if I had this? You give me so much already, but I would love to have another free gift since you want to give me, because you love me, because you created me, that I should ask you, right? Through all of this, you're able to achieve a very high tranquility of mind, because this process of Hitbodedut, this concept of talking to Hashem like he's your friend, thanking Hashem, asking Hashem, in a way which you would never think, it actually brings you to a state of bitul, nullification of ego, nullification of external self. It brings you to a very deep connection to your internal self. And once you're connected to Shabbat, to your soul, to your inner self, to your egoless state, then you're able to breathe slower. And when you're able to breathe slower, you're able to be thinking clearly. And when you're able to think clearly, you're able to find God in your life. That's why Rabbi Nachman says it's a mitzvah gedola liot besimcha tamid. It is a tremendous mitzvah to be happy always. Was Rabbi Nachman the first hippie? I don't know. From reports about him, it sounded like he was kind of serious. But on the other hand, it seems like nobody's a greater proponent, not just in Jewish history, but in the history of the world, and I'm not exaggerating, that you should fight for joy at every moment of your life, and you shouldn't give it up for nothing. Why was Rabbi Nachman so obsessed with us being happy all the time? It wasn't because he wanted us to have some ephemeral experience of pleasure, because that's enjoyable. Rabbi Nachman was a spiritual master. He was a savant. He was prescient in all psychological and spiritual matters. Rabbi Nachman said it's a mitzvah gedola to be happy always, because if you're happy always, you're able to think clearly. And if you're able to think clearly, you're able to see good in your life. And if you're able to see good in your life, you'll know that that good is the good of Hashem. Like the pasuk says, taste and see that Hashem is good. But to be able to taste and see it, you got to calm your mind down. The way to calm your mind and unlock your mind is to be able to breathe slowly. The way to breathe slowly is to not be stressed. The way to not be stressed is to be happy. So again, we go back. Moshe Rabbeinu comes to the Jewish people and tells them, you're not slaves. You don't have to be in Mitzrayim anymore. And even if you have to stay here, you can be free in this place. But they couldn't hear him because they were breathing too quickly. Rabbi Nachman says, don't worry, I got you. Go outside, alone, for an hour a day. I know that might sound a lot. I know that might sound crazy. But imagine how much time you spend looking for ways to be happy. How much time do you spend at a therapist's office? How much time do you spend looking at Google reviews for restaurants, for parties, for experiences that you can do? How much time do you invest in writhing in emotional pain over what your spouse said to you, over what your children are not listening to you? How many hours do you spend a day looking for joy? Now, Rabbi Nachman says, if you just take 1 hour a day like this, you'll have it for 23 hours. That's an amazing insight. What is another thing that Rabbi Nachman says is a key to being able to achieve tranquility of mind besides this practice called hitbodedut? He says that this is something called a zamra. King David said, I'm going to sing to Hashem, be'odi, from that little bit inside of me. What's that little bit inside of me? Rabbi Nachman says that little bit of good. If you'll notice, music, how is it made? Rabbi Nachman says made like this. You have an instrument. You're playing a song, right? What is a song? It's a collection of notes. Now, to make that collection of notes, you have a musical scale. When you go to create a song, you're looking for one good note. From that one good note, you're then looking for another good note. But to get to that next good note, you have to work through some bad notes, right? Notes that don't fit the song. That's the only way to find the next note. Then you do that again. And with Hashem's help, you're going to come to, like, let's say 3 or 4 good notes. And that's the verse of your song. And then you do this again and you find the chorus and you find the stanza and the refrain. And now you have a complete song. But what was that song from? That song was you finding all of the good points in your life from amidst all of the negative points of your life. Music is the finding, the gazing at the good and extracting of the good from amidst a backdrop of darkness. If you have no darkness, if you have no challenges in your life, if you have no obstacles, if you have no emotional or psychological stress, then you have no bad points. And if you have no bad points or blackness or darkness, you cannot pick out the good notes from that place. And then you have no music. We know that David is called the sweet singer of Israel. He's also the Mashiach. He's going to be the Redeemer of the Jewish people. What was so special about David that he was able to create such beautiful music? He had the greatest backdrop of darkness. His family ostracized him from his family. The community looked at him as a villain. They thought his entire life that he was constantly in error. And literally all he was trying to do his whole life was help everybody around him. That's a very difficult life. That's a very challenging life. And yet King David is the writer of Tehillim. It is the best-selling book in history. It is the most read book in history. And for the past 3,000 years, Jews across the world have been crying and pouring their hearts out, saying out these songs that King David wrote. But if you look at those songs are very raw. Those songs are very deep. Those songs seem to be coming from a very broken place. Ad matai, until when are you going to help me? Hashem, all my enemies are surrounding me. They're coming at me from all sides. I feel like I've descended to hell, to death. Please take me out of here. Please listen to me. Please help me. Please be here for me. You said that I'm your son. So where are you, right? But it was through the darkness of his life, when he was able to channel it into a greater, more intimate relationship with Hashem, he was able to turn his entire challenging life into one beautiful song. The song of redemption, the song of Geula, the song of Tehillim, the 50th gate, as it's taught in Kabbalah. That there's 49 gates or revelations of godliness in the world. The 50th gate is Tehillim. That was the song of King David. But nobody else wrote that song. Why was David able to write such beautiful music? Because he had so many challenges in his life. So for us in this generation that we're all struggling so much with so many different things, we can start to look at it differently. These are like bad notes, which I have to work through to find good notes. And if I actively look for good, right, the good in myself, the good in others, and the good in the world, it's an avoda, it's work. It's not going to come easily to you. It's not like what we spoke about in the past, that it's really easy for you to see bad. You have to actively focus on good. That's what Ayin Tova is, a good eye. It said that King David had beautiful eyes. It said Yosef Hatzadik had beautiful eyes. What was this beautiful eyes that they had? Avram Avinu, they had good eyes. It means that they actively searched for good. That active searching for good, despite the backdrop of darkness that they see in others and within themselves, it was the refusal to give up on the good, on any of it. That good that they were able to extract from the darkness, that itself makes music. And music is the key to joy. It said that the prophets of the past, when they want to experience God, they would go into a state of meditation through music. Why did they use music to be able to achieve a meditative state? Because the Torah says clearly that music is the ikar, it's the essence of joy. You'll notice that even if you're in a really bad mood, if you just sing your favorite song, your mood will shift, it will change. Even if you don't want to sing, if you just force yourself to sing your favorite song, you close your eyes, you clap, you dance, and you're saying it, you force yourself to, you'll notice that you start to feel joy, because music is the ikar of joy. But where does music come from? It comes from challenges. It comes from obstacles. So in a very paradoxical way, where do you get to achieve joy from? Where do you get tranquility of mind from? You get that from challenges. Rabbi Nachman says you see this clearly because Shabbat is the concept of tranquility. It's the concept of joy. But when did we receive the mitzvah of Shabbat? We had to first pass a place in the desert called Marah. Marah means bitterness. Rabbi Nachman says you learn from this, like we're saying, that this is a spiritual guide map. This is not a historical manual. So if that's the case, however we got Shabbat, meaning however we got tranquility, that's the same way they got it in the Torah. They had to first pass through a place called Marah. Marah means bitterness. Through the bitterness and being able to find the good amidst the darkness, they were able to achieve Shabbat. They couldn't have Shabbat without the bitterness first. And this, Rabbi Nachman says, is why bitterness always precedes peace. Bitterness always precedes peace within ourselves. Bitterness always precedes peace within our relationships with others. Bitterness always precedes peace with Hashem. There has to, for whatever reason, and then we're learning at least some level of it, there has to be some level of challenge, of obstacle, of bitterness before I can experience peace and tranquility. So here we have a second element. I need to be able to sing to be happy. That will quiet down my mind. That will quiet down my body. But the song comes from looking for the good amidst the bad, actively forcing myself to find it. So we have two things now. We have Hitbodedut, which is a form of secluded meditation. Then we have on top of that, singing. But not just singing. Singing the good notes of your life amidst the bad notes. That's what makes a song. And Rabbi Nachman actually says that's a greater level of joy than just being happy. He says there's two levels of joy. There's you're just simply happy. But then there's the joy of taking sadness and ripping it and turning it into joy. We're in the time of Adar right now. This is Rosh Chodesh Adar. Chodesh Tov, everybody. Adar is the month when all darkness turns to light. When sadness transforms to joy. When the horror story of Haman, of Achashverosh and the Jews in Persia, where it looks like we are reaching the first Holocaust ever. It was the first time that there was a decree that all the Jews should die. And in what looks like it's just all falling off the reels, all of a sudden flips in one moment. And the good guys win, and the bad guys lose. And these good guys who have struggled for so long, the Jewish people, seemingly unfairly going through so much torment and challenge, where we know in the story of Purim, Hashem's name never comes up. It's the only Megillah, it's the only Perek, it's the only parsha in the Torah that there is no reference to God because he was completely concealed. What Rabbi Nachman calls the chastar shebetoch chastar, the concealment within the concealment. Hashem is hiding the fact that he's hiding himself. And he says that that's our generation. And yet everything flips. How does everything flip? Song. Find the good in your life. Actively look for it. Pick out those good notes and turn it into music. Sing it out loud. I'm a good person. I've never given up. Many people in my situation have capped out. Many people in my situation have done harm to themselves, have done harm to others, but I'm still fighting. Maybe I already did those things. Maybe I did make those mistakes. But I'm on a Facebook Live right now trying to figure out how I can achieve higher levels of joy in my life. I haven't given up on myself. I haven't given up on the world yet. Those are all really good points. Rabbi Nachman said, how could it be that a Jew in their whole entire life has never done a mitzvah? It's impossible, right? Did you help an old woman down the street? Did you volunteer at a shelter at any point in your life? Did you ever give tzedakah to another person? Did you ever see a kind thing to another person? Those are things to feel really, really good about. Those are good points. Finally, we have this last, we'll call it technology, to be able to experience quieting of the mind, to be able to experience tranquility, to experience joy. Usually when we go through challenges in our life, we think that they are coming from the fact that we're inherently flawed, we're inherently deficient, we're inherently broken, right? Rabbi Nachman teaches that whatever you struggle with in your life, you have the exact potential for the opposite. So what does that mean practically? That means that if I struggle with sadness, and me personally, despite being a therapist and a social worker, and now a teacher and rabbi, I struggled with depression my whole life, okay? I've had more depressive episodes than I can count on my hands and toes. Now, what was my perspective of that? It's a genetic disorder, right? I have some affinity, some propensity based on my genes that my parents have, my uncles have, my aunts have, my grandparents have, right? I know so many people in my family who struggle with depression. So the psychiatrist is going to tell me, you have a natural affinity towards sadness. It's something that you're going to have to work to cope with your whole life. You're never going to be able to completely get rid of it, but you will be able to make steps to cope and to deal with it. And we're going to do that through therapy, through medication, through whatever. Okay, great. But that's all outside of me. And when something's outside of you, it's like a mountain to climb. If you tell me I have no capacity to actually be happy, I can only hope to cope with my unhappiness. So that's a mountain. That's a very depressing notion. But Rabbi Nachman comes to say something unbelievable. If you struggle with sadness, it's because you actually have the potential for the complete opposite. Rabbi Nachman teaches, based on Kabbalah, that every fruit has a peel. So therefore, if you see a bitter peel, it's not hinting to the fact that the thing is broken. It's hinting to the fact that there is a sweet fruit on the inside. A sweet fruit which is the exact opposite of the bitter peel. If you never had a banana in your life and you go into a forest somewhere and you see a tree with bananas on it, you take off the banana and it looks yellow, it looks interesting, it looks tasty. You go to bite into it and you notice it's very bitter. So if you don't know any better, you're just going to think that this is a bitter pill to swallow and it's not something tasty. This is something you need to stay as far away from as possible. And you're going to move on in your life and you're going to feel disappointed as you can't find anything sweet. But imagine someone comes and tells you, who's a master banana eater, no, you don't understand. That's just the peel. If you could unravel the peel, there is a sweet fruit on the inside that's totally the opposite. The direct opposite of the peel itself. This sweet banana, this sweet fruit. And you do. You unravel the peel, you taste it, and it's unbelievable. It tastes so sweet. So then you ask the man, why is there a peel then? Oh, because it needs to be ready for you to eat. Because if it's not ready for you to eat, then it's going to be bad for you. It needs to ripen first, or you need to ripen first. And when you're ready for it and it's ready for it, then you can unravel the peel. Okay. Now, Rabbi Nachman says something unbelievable. Every emotional challenge you have in your life is a peel to the exact opposite. If you struggle with anger, it's because it's a peel around this power of your soul called peace. And the more anger that you struggle with, the more and the higher potential you have for the quality of inner peace. Now, you never tasted that before. You never touched that before. You never experienced that before. Nobody could ever tell you that that's the case before because you never felt it. But if you understand that you have within you the exact opposite of whatever you struggle with, now it's not a mountain to climb. I don't have to go out to find this thing, which seems like I can never do it. I have to go in to find this thing. And yeah, maybe I have many peels over that inner peace. But if I know it's inside of me, I'll be able to have the hope. I'll be able to have the patience. I'll be able to have the conviction that I will find it. I will be able to get to that thing because it's inside of me. No matter how many peels there are that I have to peel back, now that I know that I can, that's half the battle. So for me, that I struggled with sadness my whole life. So comes Rabbi Nachman to teach you, do you know why you struggle with sadness? It's not because you're inherently depressed. It's not because you have an inherent genetic disorder that you're never going to be able to overcome. It's because you have the greatest potential for joy in the world. That's why you struggle with depression so much. You have big, bitter peels around this tremendously sweet fruit. If the fruit wasn't so sweet, you wouldn't need a peel. So now I can go look for it. I can go search for it. I can go attack it, knowing it's inside of me. I have this to offer. I have this to experience. That's exciting. That's amazing. That's hopeful. Or let's say, for instance, in the midst of my worst depressive episode, I'm laying in bed and I don't leave my bed for 3 years. I don't go to work. I'm not supporting my family. I'm just thinking all the worst possible things about myself. I'm totally, totally weak. I feel like I'm crippled, right? So up until that point, what am I thinking? I'm the weakest person in the world. Nobody can tell me the opposite. I'm for sure the weakest person in the world. That's what my experience has told me. But now all of a sudden, I say to myself, you know what? Rabbi Nachman says that to the degree that I have a peel, that I'm struggling with something, it's only a window and hint into the opposite. That means that no matter how severely weak I feel right now, I must have the potential for the complete opposite, to be so incredibly strong. And now, as opposed to the past, where I feel like I'm a victim of my life, now I realize that I actually am a soldier. I'm a warrior. I've never tasted it. I've never touched it. I've never experienced it. But if I suffer so much from feeling so weak, so incapable, I must be the strongest person in the whole freaking world. Because there's no way I'm getting out of this bed, and there's no way I'm starting my life over again. There's no way I'm going to be able to thrive and live a truly good life if I'm not the strongest person in the world. Because only the strongest person in the world can get up from this. And now all of a sudden, you start to have hope. You start to have a little whim, a little tiny nakuda of tikva, of hope, that I can actually achieve something unbelievable, not just to get to status, to baseline, to just survive, like my therapist or my psychiatrist is offering me. But I can actually have the complete opposite. I can have the most beautiful life in the world. To the degree that I struggle with feeling weak, I must be the strongest person in the world. That's amazing, right? That thought itself, understanding that whatever I'm struggling with, I have the potential for the opposite. That itself is going to bring you to a state of joy. So we had 3 points here, and with this we'll conclude. The Jews in Mitzrayim, the Jews in Egypt, they are actually a macrocosm for your psychological state of being, for your soul's experience in this physical world. That's the Jews going down to Mitzrayim. Now you have Moshe, you have a great tzaddik, you have a great sage telling you, you're actually free. You're not a slave. You don't have to run with everybody else. And you don't have to just fall down in a fetal position. You can move inside. If you move inside, you'll find all the good you've been looking for in your life, because it's not outside there. It's not external to you. It's all inside of you. But you can't hear him. Why can't you hear him? Because you're breathing too quickly. Comes Rabbi Nachman to tell you, when you come to Breslev, you'll find ruach. You'll find the ability to breathe deeply. What are some of the things that Rabbi Nachman gives us to be able to breathe deeply? One, hitbodedut, taking a time on your own to go out to nature, your favorite field, your favorite park, your favorite forest, and go talk to Hashem like he's your best friend. Say thank you for all the different positive things in your life. Say thank you for all the struggles in your life. Say thank you for believing in you so much that he gives you all these challenges, because you must be able to get through them. Otherwise, you wouldn't have them. And then ask Hashem for whatever it is that you yearn for. Not from a place of, I should have this, but I so dearly want this. And I think you want this too. That's one. Two, we spoke about a zamra, that the key to being happy is music. Music is good points which are drawn from a backdrop of bad points. To stop looking at the difficulties of my life as the antithesis of a good life, as the antithesis of a happy life, but to be able to actually realize that it is the backdrop of these negative notes, these bad points, that are allowing me to be able to search for good points, to actively search for good points, even though every part of me is telling me not to, and there is none. When I do that, I create music, and music is the key to joy. Finally, we have this concept of this paradigm shift, that instead of thinking that I am a victim of whatever I'm suffering from, understanding that it's only a peel, and it's bitter. Nobody's denying that. Nobody's invalidating that. Rabbi Nachman says that this world can be Gehenna. Not even for the next world. This world, this lifetime, could feel like hell. So Rabbi Nachman is not skirting it over when he says it's a mitzvah gedolah to be happy always. He knows what this world's like. He knows the bitterness of this world. He knows the struggles of this world. But he explains that all of those things are just peels. And if you come to the recognition that whatever you struggle with, you have the complete potential for the opposite, and it's inside of you, now you can begin to really search for it in earnest. And just the notion of knowing that it's inside of you already, and there's a fruit that's waiting for you that's the opposite of the thing you struggle with, that if you struggle with sadness, you have a potential for a higher level of joy than someone who's naturally happy. That if you struggle with anger, you have the potential for peace at a higher level than someone who is naturally peaceful. And the list goes on and on. Then you start to experience a level of hope. And hope is the key to joy. With these three things, you are able to quiet down your external self, the chasing, the rat race, the always feeling like I have to keep up with the Joneses, that I have to achieve this and to do this and to move here and to experience this. And I can just experience the real good, which is already inside of me. And I don't need any external technology to taste or touch it. I just need the wisdom and advice of spiritual masters, of real tzaddikim, who are doctors of the soul, like Rabbi Nachman of Breslev. I hope everybody has an amazing Adar, an amazing month of transformation. The main thing is action. It's one thing to be inspired by words, but the way that it changes your life is when you practically apply them. Let this month to be a month of experimentation, trying something new, trying something different, moving beyond my comfort zone. And with that, we'll be able, Bezrat Hashem, to experience not just a personal transformation, but a transformation of the collective consciousness of the Jewish people and of the world, to turn darkness into light, to actually flip sadness and turn it into the highest state of joy. My name is David Yisrael Kalmus. I have a non-for-profit organization called Sion Breslev Project, where we have melded and harmonized mental health and the highest level of spiritual wisdom, Breslev Chassidus, to be able to deal with the ills and the challenges of this world and our personal lives. Highly recommend you go to our YouTube channel, Sion Breslev Project. We have 500 videos there. We have over thousands of hours of content. We have chaburas, online chaburas, with men, with women. We are going deeply into Rabbi Nachman's books and trying to get to the depths of them on a personal, practical level in our life to totally transform all areas of our life. We started 4 years ago, and we have students from all around the world who are genuinely, authentically working together with no judgment, with no anger, with no expectations of others that they should be, could be, would have been. We're just growing. We're just doing this together as a brotherhood, as a sisterhood, with love that's unconditional, with non-judgment that's unconditional. And Rabbi Nachman said these are all the keys to being able to experience real closeness to Hashem. So Bezrat Hashem, I hope to connect to you outside of here. You can email me at rabbikalmus@gmail.com, or you can go on our website at sionbreslowproject.com, and you can reach out to us from there. Everybody have an amazing Adar. We should all go up in Simcha and be able to utilize our minds in the way we want to, and to be able to really experience the divine by quieting our minds.